Welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman, and today I got a real treat for you. His name is Jerrold Crowder, and he is the organizational development consultant at the beautiful city of Phoenix in sunny Arizona. Jerrold, say what's up to everybody.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? Glad to be here, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Good stuff, Peg. Good stuff. So one thing I love about public works and municipalities, the titles. Your organizational development consultant, probably one of the wordiest, most vaguest terms out there. So come on, bring us down to what your position is, what it does, and then run us through a random Tuesday in the day in the life or the work day in the life of Jerrold Crowder.
So the organizational development consultant title is the working title. It's not the title that I think shows up on payroll. But I think what the city was looking for is someone who does fill in those gaps, right? There's someone who is a consultant, can go in between advising and listening and offering suggestions to departments that need assistance in team building and leadership. So there's the consultant component. The development part is the structure. That is the idea where we say, let's put a plan together. Okay, let's think about what you all need to do to get to that area that you want to. You've told me your problems, but we need to work on solutions. So the development part is saying, here are some of the things that we can consider for you all. And then of course, organization is just simple. It's for all. So what that basically means is that I don't focus on just one department. I'm focusing on all departments within the city. So structurally, the title meets exactly what it is the job role is, but it sounds a little more fluffy than what people would assume. And I've worked as a consultant in the private sector. So when I actually got interviewed for this job, I was assuming that I was going to be an outside consultant. And they're like, no, this is an internal position. I'm like, a very fancy title for an internal position. But the goal was to seek out those talented, qualified individuals who may have understood what is an organizational development consultant. From the private sector, I knew exactly what that was. And that may not translate as much for people in private sector. Or I'm sorry, in the public sector. So,
Gotcha. A couple questions to follow up with that. Go ahead.
You had another question was, what is an average Tuesday? So an average Tuesday for me is consists of teaching a leadership class that we have. Every other Tuesday is what that will be, but the Tuesday prior to that is preparing for those classes, making sure that we've got all the details, going over the script for the show. And it does sound like that there's a script, right? So making sure that we're covering all our objectives and outcomes for that and making sure that's done. And since this class is taught twice a year, I'm also looking back, what did I do last year that it wasn't successful? How could I change that for this particular semester? So that's pretty much the basis of a Tuesday, but I also manage 4 other programs. I'll manage our Advanced Phoenix program, which is a process improvement using Lean and Six Sigma functionalities. I also do mentorship programs. So I manage the mentor program for the city of Phoenix. I'm actively involved in NFBPA, which is a forum for Black professionals within the city. And so we're preparing for next year already in November, preparing for that. And I also manage our Phoenix Respect, which is our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. So I'm pretty busy on managing all those programs. And so that's pretty much Tuesday is incrementally managing each of the programs that I'm in charge of.
Gotcha. Do you feel like most of your time is spent on Zoom calls? Is it your emails? Are you in these rooms with what's the ratio of where Jerrold, finding you at the city?
Yeah, so I think in 2024, if I were to rewind this to 2020, I would probably spend most of my time in meeting rooms, in a chair, meeting with people in person. COVID has done a lot for all of us. It's changed the nature of how we do business. And one of the things that it's done is saying, look, I can't be in 20 buildings in one day, right? I can't. Traveling is part of that process where I'm losing time being productive by traveling. So we've all converted to virtual meetings. But that also means now I can do back to back to back to back meetings and not, not miss a beat. So there is that part of it. I try to spend about 33% of my day in meetings. I try not to do too many meetings in a day because as a development consultant, um, we're not just doing the development process and consulting. We also are checking in on people that are involved in these projects, right? So I may have to have follow-ups with my leadership team, like, hey, where are we at with this? We need to get this figured out by the next 2 days. So I try to limit that to about 33% of meetings a day, and then 33% of actual real work. And then, unfortunately, about a third of that time is also with admin work. That's just checking emails and follow-ups and scheduling meetings myself, not having meetings, but scheduling meetings, checking on rosters to make sure people are attending classes. So it's split pretty equally. And that's on purpose to make sure that I'm not spending as much time in meetings and not as much time working.
Yeah, yeah. You alluded to you having experience in the private side doing consulting. And in my experience, working with consultants or having been in a company where a consultant comes in, you could tell that they're more so facilitators, which I get it. They can't be with us all day, every day, and they can't, live in the office with us. So what would you say is your best practice to grab, some of the things you learned on the private side where you drop in, you educate, you do your thing, and then you're out of there and making sure it sticks and stays. Because we all know how it is. Somebody comes in, everybody gets all hot and bothered about something, then boom, they leave. And then it's like going to a conference. You go to a conference, you get excited, you go back into the work office and you forget all that. So what have been some things you've pulled from the private side to the public side to make things stick and resonate further?
Man, that is a great question because it's the struggle that you have when you're in the private sector. A lot of times, one thing that's the advantage of the private sector is that you don't really have limitations of communication. I can go up to the chief officer of whatever and say, hey, this is what we need to make this work. And so part of that in the private sector is that you go as high as you need to go because the decision-making process usually is a lot higher. And those persons are willing to talk to consultants to say, hey, we're paying X amount of dollars for this project. I need to make sure this project's successful. So you can have those meetings with the members in the C-suite and it's not an issue. And so part of the sustainability of what I do is making sure I'm with the stakeholders and the decision makers, because that's how you get it implemented. If I'm just meeting with the managers and supervisors of a particular team, even if it's just a project team, it's not sustainable because ultimately they're making decisions that maybe the business hasn't made a decision on. So the goal for that is you need to talk to the stakeholder and say, this is how it's implemented. And usually if they can see the bigger picture of how this will affect them in the long run, especially if you're talking about ROI, right? Hey, you're spending X amount on me, and when I leave, you're still going to be spending the same amount of money on your system, on your workforce. I'm going to be removing you this large salary you're paying me, but that money could go into these areas of sustainability. So that's how you get it to stick, is make sure that the decision makers, the stakeholders are in place. That's the way to go about doing it in the private sector.
Gotcha. Yeah. In the Bible, it says a prophet isn't known in his own land. So how do you get over that? Oh, that's Jerrold. He's just a co-worker down on floor number 2. He's coming up here, trying to make change and stuff. How do you get people to I hate to say it, take you serious and get on board with the things that you are being directed to make the change of and help them get in the right place? How do you make that? How do you get that?
Another great question. And part of that goes with things like doing Gemba walks in the organizations. So rather than just have those meetings that we talked about where I'm meeting with the C-suites and getting with stakeholders, that's the buy-in, right? That's the money. That's the money right there. How do I get them? But before I meet and implement the plans with the stakeholders, I'm going to the offices. I'm going to the locations of all of these businesses. So if you tell me, yeah, we've got 32 offices. So just to give you some example, I worked with the hospital network that had 42 physician locations where they would have, practice with, seeing patients on a regular basis. The hospital was one thing, the entity where the business was, but they would have separate little clinics that they would have. I spent probably 6 months of that project going to every single clinic, sitting with the front desk person who's taking in the patients, sitting with the medical assistants who are doing the vitals, working with the physicians, moving to the billing department in the back end, going to the pharmacy. So I'm seeing the workflow processes from start to finish, seeing where there's areas of improvement. And so part of that is, if I'm showing up to the offices, meeting the employees and the workers, they now see me as Jerrold, as one of their teammates. Like, they know I'm here to help, but they're like, oh, he was cool. He came in one day and hung out with us, and he sat and watched us, and you know, being personal with people. That's one of the things that I've done as a consultant in the private sector, is just making sure that I'm personable with people, that they don't see me as the flash in, flash out consultant, that they see me as a person who's there, as a team member who's there. And so in doing so, you get a lot out of people. They're way more open to communicate with you about the problems that they've experienced and areas of improvement. So that's the first part. If you're going to be a consultant, I know consultants that are high level only. They sit in the C-suites, they talk to the stakeholders, but they don't find themselves in the clinics or the offices of the business where the work is really being done. I've never thought I would be successful unless I could touch to the community.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to pull more from you about is that being personable. You know, we all know those people that they have a wealth of knowledge, they have, you know, a lot of gift, skills, and talents, but they can't connect with everybody, or they can't connect with the majority, or they can't connect with anybody. What would you say is Jerrold's, you know, top 2 tips on to be personable or personal to you know, to allow people to open up their minds and their hearts to receive what you have to give to them?
Yeah, the first thing is, no matter how high I get in my career, I can always tap into the where I was 20 years ago. So I know, well, I say 20 years ago, well, now I'm getting older now, 30 years ago. I know that 30 years ago, I was the same person. I was the frontline person that didn't have any corporate experience or corporate training or corporate direction. So I've worked in a call center before. I've flipped hamburgers when I was a teenager. I've worked at jobs that were close to minimum wage. That's never gone away from me. So I know that when I see a person who's taken in the front desk person, the person that sits in front of people, that's your face of your organization. I know what that looks like. And I know that person's going to come in, somebody's going to come into you when you're having a great day and somebody comes in, they're having a bad day. I know that person's going to affect you in a way that says, oh, well, I don't have time for all this and all that. And you're like, I know what that's like. And there's a sense of just calm that needs to kind of come in. So the best advice is to tap into your own experience. Now, this is where it gets difficult. If you've never worked those jobs, you're going to have a hard time in relating to people because you've never done that. I've done that work. And I hate to sound like a politician, but that's what it kind of sounds like. You know, when you have politicians that like, I'm here for the common man and the hardworking blue collar people. Oh, okay, cool. So you've worked at McDonald's before? No. Well, you worked at the call center. Well, no, I've never done that. Well, okay.
I was giving all my money.
You've been a janitor. No, I never done all that, but I still feel you. That's different. For me, I've worked at those jobs. I've been in those situations. So I can still tap into that very easily because I understand what it took for me to go from being a fry cook at McDonald's to a call center employee to a corporate trainer to a consultant. That journey was not easy. And I had to work really, really hard to learn what I needed to learn to be the next level. And so I think when I meet with people, part of the connectivity is knowing that, hey, man, I get it. And a lot of that is talking their language. You know, oh, man, well, so you got this workflow that you have to fill out all these documentations by hand. Well, how long does that take you? Yeah, it takes me like 15 minutes per form. Wow, that's a lot of time. Yeah, and then I have to hand it over to this person, and that person takes 20. Like, I get those workflow processes because I've done them. So I think that's the first tip. If you really want to be really good at it, if you can't have the experience of going back to your past and working as a fry cook or a front desk person, then at least spend the time seeing the difficult process that those individuals go through.
Gotcha. I the reason these podcasts are great because there's people that listen to them and they might not be where Jerrold's at today. They might be in that mid journey. You know, they're not flipping hamburgers right now. They're not on the front desk, but they're trying to work their way up. So I want Jerrold to give us give us a brief detail of your career path, where you
Mhm.
started from high school all the way up until today, so somebody
Okay.
can mimic or model your career path to end up where you're at
Okay.
today.
So the very first job, the very first job I had in high school was a fry cook at McDonald's. I did fries, and then I think I moved into the grill within like a couple of months.
Yeah.
One of the things I had mentioned to the manager is, and this is for everybody. One thing I had mentioned is that I thought my level of intelligence and work ethic was higher than a simple task like just dropping fries. Like I think I could do more. I could do more. So the first part is just making sure that when there's opportunities, is making sure you tell people, like, I know you put me in this position to do this job, but I think I could do this job. And so the very first thing was like, put me on grill. I could do that. I'm capable of doing it. And I knew that came with a lot more activity. I knew it would keep me busy and my days would go by a lot faster. So I did. They let me do it, and that was it. Um, right after high school, when I got into college, I worked two jobs that were way out of my comfort zone. I worked as a roofer, and I'm afraid of heights, just so everybody knows I'm afraid of heights. But I worked as a roofer in my summer of
Yeah.
my freshman year in college.
Is this in
And so
Arizona?
this is in Kansas. And
Okay,
so
okay.
I'm slinging shingles on top of roofs. I'm climbing up roofs. And once again, I have a fear of heights. But it was, I think the job was paying like $15 an hour. And at that time, minimum wage was $5 an hour. So I'm making three times the money of what a minimum wage is. And I took the job because I was like, look, I need to make money for the summer because I'm going back to college in a couple of months. And my parents aren't paying for school. I'm paying for school myself. I need to make money to save to have something to live off on. So that's why I took the job. Is real. And I just got past my fears because the money was more important to me than my fear of heights. Um, and so that was the first semester. The next semester, I did a very similar thing. I don't know anything about cars, but I worked at Jiffy Lube as a lube tech, and I would just drain oil and I would
Yeah.
top it off, and then same thing. The people that work up top were making, I think, maybe $14 or $15 an hour. But if you were willing to work down below the cars and do that work, you'd make $2 an hour more. So I just said, hey, I need that extra money. That $2 an hour is going to be a lot. So they're like, okay, we'll walk you through it. And I'm down below there with no experience on working on cars, worked underneath the cars there. Then I transitioned into more of a career process. I got a job working for the Department of Education as a tech, fielding calls for financial assistance. So I worked for FAFSA and did that for 3 years. And that's where I started my training career. I was so detail oriented in that job. That's how they got into the training component.
I wanted to stop you there. You said something. You skirted over it. I don't want us to lose it. You said you went from the jobs to a career process.
Mhm.
Explain that part. Leaving the job to an actual career.
I At that point in time, I had already gone through my freshman, my sophomore, and my junior year in college. So graduation's coming up soon. So this is where that thing in my head started to click, like, oh my goodness, I'm about to graduate college in a year. I don't know what I'm going to do. So my degree at that time was in journalism, and we'll get to that very soon. It was in journalism. I hadn't done anything to prepare myself for journalism whatsoever. I'm just going through school and thinking, oh, okay, I'm ready. Wait a minute, I'm working at Jiffy Lube. That's not a journalism job. So I went to try to get my first job in journalism. They were only offering a part-time job. So I worked at the newspaper in Lawrence, where I went to school, worked there in the marketing department. All that meant is I would take phone calls for people wanting to place ads in a newspaper. For all those young kids out there, newspaper is this paper thing that you open and you read. It's storage. Yeah.
It's not on my
Right.
phone. Yeah.
Right. So all they had was people calling in to look for ads. And so I worked there part-time. So the Jiffy Lube job was initially the full-time job. And then I had the part-time job working in marketing. Well, then the opportunity came up to work in the Department of Education job. And even though I didn't see that as a career path, I saw it as giving me a broader opportunity to be in a call center structure, to learn. It was a Department of Education job, so it was government. So I thought this seems stable. So even if I just work this job for the next couple of years, I have something that's stable. So I started to transition out of the Jiffy Lube job, went into Department of Education, kept the part-time job working in the marketing department of the newspaper. And then from the Department of Ed job, I was so good and so detailed at giving information to the schools, to the students, to the state departments that, and because you're being monitored as you're doing these calls. One of the managers said, "Hey, you're really good. We've got a lot of feedback from students and from schools and from, state agencies that says they talked to you and that you really helped them. You were very detailed. How do you do what you do?" And I just said, I just read all the regulations that I'm supposed to. I follow up, I give them exact information, and I just follow it and try to keep it succinct and direct, not, too much, because they want to know, give it to me right now, and I need to move on. And then I started training people to do what I did. Told them how to mark their books, told them how to make notes, how to follow through the process and get through things faster. And they made me a customer service director of training. And that's how it started, that my
Wow.
life was changing into more of a training component.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And then how did you get from Lawrence, Kansas all the way out to Phoenix, Arizona?
Yeah, this is the best of all the stories. So as I'm on the phone talking to, I don't know what school it was, but one of the schools had called me, and we're talking on the phone. The guy said, "Hey, I need help with this," and I helped him out. He said, "Okay, cool." He said, "Has anybody ever told you you have a radio voice?" I said, "No, no, didn't know." He said, "Okay, cool." About a month later, I'm on the phone with another school representative, and a woman comes in, and we go through her thing, and I get her figured out. She's like, "Have you ever been told that you have a radio voice?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Okay." Well, she's like, "I just want to let you know, I went to school for radio, and there's a really good radio school. I forgot the name of the school now. It's like the Academy of Radio and Broadcasting or something like that." And she's like, "Yeah, they're all over the country. You can go there, and they really help you in how to be in radio." So I was like, "Okay, this is pre-Google." So I'm having to do a lot of research on my own to reach out to them. Websites are there, but there's no Google. So I found them and found that they had different locations. And from Kansas, the closest location that they had that was affordable was in Phoenix. So me and a couple of my friends decided, I was like, you know what, let me just try out. Let me see what life's gonna be like. So we all decided to make a road trip to go to Phoenix, Arizona. So we drove from Kansas to Phoenix, about 17 hours in a rental car. And we get there, and the school is not like a university, so they have appointments for you to be like onboarded into the school. So we had an onboarding appointment, which was, I think, let's say it's on a Thursday at 10 a.m. So we're in Phoenix, or Tempe actually is where we stayed. We're in Tempe on a Wednesday, and we're all, in our early 20s. So
Yeah.
we've never been to Phoenix, and we've never been to Tempe. So we go to Tempe. We have a great time. We're partying it up. We have a great time. And then the next day, it's 9:30. And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's 9:30. I got this appointment at 10. We slept in." So I called the guy and said, "Hey, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get there, because where it looks like, once again, there's no Google, there's no, there's no mapping, no GPS mapping. You just have to
Yeah,
map it
paper
out on the
maps.
phone.
Yeah.
You got a paper map. So you think this is gonna take me a while to get there." So so the guy's like, "Well, we can't move your appointment, but we do have an appointment on Tuesday." I'm like, "I'm in town for 2 days, for 2 more days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we're leaving, Saturday morning." And he said, "Okay, well, Tuesday's the best we got." It's like, "Oh man." So at that point in time, I literally thought, Joseph, I was like, I have messed up my entire life. I missed this appointment that I was supposed to be at. I drove out here just for this appointment, and I missed it. And so one of the guys that was there is like, hey, he knew some people that had gone to ASU that were from our town. So he's like, "Man, let's just, you know what? Let's make the best of this weekend." So we decided to go to ASU, and we were at ASU, and I started walking around campus, and I was like, "Man, this is beautiful." Yeah. So we ended up in I think the financial aid hall or something like that. And there was a brochure about broadcasting, and it said, you know, Walter Cronkite School of journalism broadcast. I was like Walter Cronkite, like the news guy? But like, oh. So I started reading through it and realized that ASU had one of the best broadcasting schools in the country.
Oh, wow.
And that changed my whole perspective of like where I should go and what I should do. I'm like, instead of going to this small school that, has this whatever program or certificate that I get, I could just enroll at ASU and go to the best broadcasting school in the country. And that's what happened.
Wow.
I ended up just enrolling in ASU and going broadcasting. And so as soon as I moved to Arizona, I started looking for radio jobs because as a side hustle, I was DJing parties in Kansas. And so when I went to look for jobs in radio, they're like, okay, sure. The one AM station was like, oh, you've got DJ experience. Like, I got DJ experience at like house parties and weddings and bar mitzvahs, but not engineering stuff. And so they saw that I was enrolled in school at ASU in broadcasting. They saw I was a DJ, and they gave me a job. So then when I moved to Arizona, I was fearful because I didn't have a job. But within the first month, I got a job at a radio station, and I worked in radio. And so even though I was there to get a job in radio, I got a job in radio before I even started taking classes. So I did radio for 3 years. And then I had my first child right after the second year and realized that being on radio required me to be in the studio at 5, leave at 9. And then on the weekends, I was at, promotional things, and I just wasn't spending time with my kids. So I had to look for another job and really hated getting out of broadcasting, but I just needed something. And I got a job at a mortgage company training, because I had trained before. So they gave me a training job. Of course. And so I worked in the training, and I think they thought because of the broadcasting experience that I could talk to people fairly well. So I got a job in the mortgage industry working as a trainer. And that's what I did for the next maybe 6 years. And then the company I was working for went out of business through the recession. And the next job I got was a consulting job doing training. And then from there, for the next 15 years, I consulted. And so for me, I would say that as advice goes, I would not advise anybody to work for a company that's going to go out of business. Don't hitch your education career to a career that you don't know that's sustainable. But what I did learn about all those transitions was I took the skill sets that I had from every single job and applied them to the next job. So think about this. I'm coming from radio going into mortgage. There's no relationship to those two industries. Yeah. But what I explained to them, where I was grounded in, is communication. This is what I realized in all the things that I did: call center, broadcasting, training, all communication. So I found my niche, but it took me about 10 years to figure out, what do I have in common with all these things that I'm doing? It's communication. So then I just made it a focus of just making my career anything related to communication.
I was going to ask that. That's usually my next question, is like the transferable skills. I feel like the path makes the person. All the things you picked up along the way that you put in your tool belts of like, here's what I got good at doing at this place. Here's what I got good at doing the oil change. Here's what I did at McDonald's.
Right.
And it made you who you are today. You answered that question for me. But I want to pull out of you, what is one skill set that somebody could pick up to be successful at what you do today? What would that one skill set be?
I think it is the relatability. I think it's that thing. When you get into the point where you're trying to be, and I'll say this because everybody's dream is very different when it comes to their career. Some people's focus in their careers to make money, to make a lot of money. I just want to make a lot of money. Okay, I'll put you there over here. And some people I just want to be good. Good in making money don't necessarily go hand in hand. Somebody may say, I just want to be good at what I do. Okay. And then my favorite in the middle is I just want to be secure. I want to have a job that I don't have to worry about losing it. So if you think about those three opportunities, right? Somebody who wants to make money, somebody who wants to be good, and somebody who just wants to be sustainable. Whatever your path is from that, whatever it looks like, you still have to have this ability to connect with people. Why? Well, because if you want to make money, people have to trust you. So if you're selling a product, they got to trust you. You can't just go in there and say, I'm going to sell you a product. I got to trust that you're telling me what you're telling me is real. No, don't give me that schematics of, oh, this product is 5 years sustainable and it does this. Like, okay, well, how long have you been the proof of concept? Well, we've had proof of concept for 2 years. Well, that's not 5 years. So how do you tell me that it's 5 years and you've only been working on it for 2? So if you want to make money and that could include sales or includes bidding career, you need to be able to connect with people. That's that. Somebody who wants to be good at something. Well, what skills can I work on that don't cost money? Talking to people doesn't cost you anything. You can learn that skill for free. Everything else, you may need some proper training and you may need to go through schooling for that, but communication is free. And then the last thing in the sustainability process is what's sustainable. I know for sure, no matter what career path I go in, if communication is my number one top skill, I can go from broadcasting to mortgage to consulting to training to, if I decided I want to become a banker, I could do that. Whatever I want to do, if I can talk to people and communicate and connect, I have an openness of jobs for the rest of my life. So I think for people that are struggling, and I'm saying this knowing that there are people who are introverts that are like, I don't know, I just don't know how to talk to people. Like, it's not my comfort zone. Think about this. Communication does not necessarily mean you have to do like me and be a talker. Communication includes your listening skills. So if you can listen really well, if you don't like to do the talking, communication is listening. So if you can listen to what other people are talking about and see the impression they make on people, like, oh, wow, okay, that's not a good impression. Or listen to the needs of people, right? That could help you to say, okay, I may not be able to talk myself through this, but I can listen to you and tell me what your needs are. Okay, you need this, you need that, and then provide them with that need, you're good. So communication as a whole, both the talking and the listening, I think are the best things that anybody can do to set themselves up for success.
Yeah, I feel like we forget that communication is also listening. When somebody's a great communicator, we think of some great orator on stage and they got a good voice and no filler words and they're great. But some of the best communicators are, like you said, they can distill what information has been given to them and they regurgitate it in a way that, like, they don't second guess that they missed anything. So
absolutely.
So I need you to communicate to us a story. It's story time. I need a story from Jerrold when something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Yeah. One of the things that went wrong on my watch was I was in a project where the assumption was that the system would operate in a way that the designer expected it to work. And I trusted that the design would do the things that I thought it would do. What I did is I missed the opportunity to ask a question. And I didn't ask the question that I really should have asked. It was in my brain to ask, but I didn't ask because I thought that this person was so skilled, so above me in a technical aspect. I'm like, who am I to question this person? Their technical credentials are way above mine. So I didn't ask the question, thinking that I shouldn't question somebody who's got a higher skill set than I do. However, what I realized is that if you do not ask that question and things attempt to get implemented, what you find out is you see the crash happening. You're like, oh, I should have asked that because I saw this coming. I saw this coming and I didn't ask the question. So in that scenario, and what I learned from that is, it does not matter who you're at the table. It does not matter your level of skill or experience. If you have it in your head to ask a question, ask it. Ask it. That person's either going to tell you that they have the answer, and then it will kind of work with you. Say, okay, thank you. You can put that on your notes. This is what happens when this happens. Write that on your notes. However, if you don't ask the question, there are going to be equally the same amount of people at the table like you that have the same question, and everybody's afraid to ask because either A, they don't want to challenge the authority figure. They think that person is far more advanced than they are, so why question them? And so that question never gets answered. So I would advise people that if you want to if you want to make sure that you don't miss that opportunity for things, ask the question that's on your mind. Don't feel like it's going to be dumb. Everybody else in the room knows it. I will tell you this. Everybody in the room does not know it. They will pretend that they know the answer,
Yeah.
but they're in the same position as you. They would love to think that they knew the answer, but they're fearful, just like you are, to being pulled out and say, "Oh, see, she doesn't know this. He doesn't know this. They don't even need to be in this room." I no longer worry about those people. I ask questions, and what they will find out is that when that question is then answered, the explanation they get is way more complicated than they thought. And so the advice on that is to make sure you ask those questions when you think you should.
How do you bury that imposter syndrome, that little voice that says you're not qualified to ask that, or qualified to speak on that, or qualified to teach on that? How do you bury that and get over that?
Because it's been proven. It's been proven to me that we always think we're lesser than people that are in positions of authority, people that are in, even as a consultant, there were people that had great questions and great concerns that I didn't consider in certain, and a lot of that is, even as I told you, even in gimbal walks or following the workflow process at companies, they're only conveying to me things that I'm asking. But there are certain work processes that maybe they forget about because it's so routine and repetitious for them. They forget that it's even part of their workflow. Like if I said, write down everything you do on this workflow process step by step, they may give me a step list of 10 things. That workflow process may be 40 steps, but they're skipping over things that they think, oh, he knows that. He knows that. He knows that. So I don't have to tell him that. And so I think what you learn in these rooms sometimes is the people that are been given the authority and supervisor and management positions or consultant positions, they're not always there because of their skill. They may be there out of a number of reasons. And I'm going to throw them out there. So hopefully
They've been there longer. Yeah.
They've been there longer. It's nepotism. It could be a number of things. So you can't go in there thinking that you don't know anything because this person is in a position of authority. Everybody didn't get there by talent. And so, avoiding the imposter syndrome, first of all, is knowing that everybody doesn't know everything. Or at the end of the day, what some people say is nobody knows nothing. And if you can believe that nobody knows nothing, that there's an opportunity for you to learn that people are not in positions always by talent.
Yeah.
Or experience.
Sure. You're the consultant coming in the room. Most people would think, oh, the consultant, they're just going to come in, regurgitate some information they probably read on a 10-point blog article online and blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure, having known you for the last 30 minutes, I know you're a little bit more sophisticated than that. So I want to know what's Jerrold's personal and professional development regimen like. How does Jerrold upskill himself over time, throughout the years, to keep showing up better and better?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. The part of that is diving into it. When you are, I'm going to try to phrase this the right way. When you walk into a room with people of likeness and you are unlike them, you can't just put on the costume and people are like, oh, you're one of us, right? You put the uniform on and you wear the uniform and you navigate with everybody else and you kind of walk in. For those who like to nerd out like I do, if you've ever seen The Walking Dead, there's a scenario in The Walking Dead where one of the individuals in the show puts on a mask of a dead person's face and walks with the dead, part of the storyline. And the dead don't know that he's not one of them. They're like, oh, he's one of us, right? He's got the mask on. But he has to mimic their likeness, right? He can't just put on the face and walk normal like a normal person. He has to mimic the life that the zombies follow, walk like them, moan like them. They have a certain smell. He has to smell like them. That analogy is kind of how I go into it in the business world. I can't just come in and pretend to be your teammate and walk like you and talk like. I have to get myself into that character. And so that means that if there's a particular style of way you do things or how people in that department learn, I have to figure that out because my learning process is very different. So how have you been taught? How did you learn? Oh, okay, I see these things. And then once I get into that process like them, I see where the gaps are. And those gaps are the areas that I take away as the nuggets, is that this is how I become better, and how I learn theirs is not just walking the walk, but talking the talk, and fully engaging myself in those cultures. Because that culture component is what overshadows everything. Even if you all have a similar and same learning style, it's the culture that is. So I'm not a huge fan of potlucks, just not. But if potluck is
Well,
the way
why
to
is that?
go,
Why is that? Why? Because everybody
uh,
potluck that's like it's a cool thing to do.
yeah, because you never know what you're getting. It just, I mean, I don't like potluck surprises where I'm eating something and the next thing you know, you tell me is like, oh, you put that ingredient in there. Oh, okay. I don't want to have that. But I have worked
Understood.
in cultures where that's how they connect as a team. So I've had to, learn how to get my special potluck recipe. Like, what could I bring that's good for everybody, that everybody can enjoy, that's very simple. So things like that, learning how to contribute in a potluck, even though it's not your style, not
Yeah.
something you're into, join the culture, get involved.
Yeah.
And so those are things that, like, I think have been parts that I've taken up, different nuggets that I've learned. And as I go into different businesses, I found that there's a commonality of some of these things outside of the nature of the business that they do. So banking, hospitals, tech, all the different businesses I've worked in, the commonality is connecting with the people there, learning their culture, and literally going. So on Halloween, on two of my previous consulting jobs, the culture, they all dressed up for Halloween. Guess what?
Yeah.
I'm dressing up for Halloween. So you find yourself walking in that zombie walk with the team, because you're like, if they're doing it, I'm doing it. Not because I want
Yeah.
to, but because I know that's how I can get connected to the people in that business.
Yeah, yeah. To kind of go against what you're saying, not to, for the sake of argument, fitting in, getting in line, with what everybody else is doing is great. I have a beef with golf, right? I feel like golf is some construct that, the people who started
Right.
golfing back in the days, they're still around. They still
Mm.
hold the gold. They still have the keys to the industry. But the younger, we don't play golf. I don't want to
Yes.
spend 4 hours at a golf course and $150 and to play a sport that nobody's really good at. So
Yeah.
I think there will come a day, and this is kind of my soapbox. Is I want to do away with golf in our culture, in our society, or
Yeah.
as like a corporate thing to do. The game is fun, but I don't think it needs to be at every association. Oh, we have a golf tournament, have a golf tournament. So that's just my thing. If people golf, I'm like, no, I don't want to golf.
And I think one thing that you're saying is actually kind of aligned with the thing I'm talking about, the culture. That may have been an older culture, that's how it was when I was in the mortgage industry. None of the deals that we got done, you're asking somebody to take on $1 billion worth of loans. And so if you've got $1 billion worth of loans, they like, you want our business, and here's how you do it. Meet us at the golf course,
Yeah.
meet us at happy hour. I mean, there were
Yeah.
times where I think that it could be a Wednesday at 9 in the morning, and one of the loan officers at a company that had $1 billion of business was like, "Hey, come out with us. We're meeting at so and so's." Like, it's 9 in the morning. Yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it. We got you. You want me to go out and drink with you at 9 in the morning? Like, that just doesn't seem right. Those days are over now, because obviously the businesses that did that were part of that recession process where they were spending money ridiculously on things that they shouldn't have been. So that's how that works. But golf, I think, is in that same realm, that yes, old business was like done on the golf course, but I think that also took away from including everyone. It was a
Yeah.
selective group of people, and
When you didn't go, yeah.
culturally, racially,
Yep.
genderly,
Yep.
sexual orientation based. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily collective of things that certain groups want to do. So what have we learned? We've learned that we've able to go back to something that's more natural, just sitting down and breaking bread with people, having dinner, giving everybody an opportunity to speak. Because if you're talking about golf, not everybody has clubs. But if I say,
Yeah.
let's have dinner, let's all meet, anybody can eat. And I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about your dietary restrictions, because guess what? It's 2024. They're going to have a vegan menu. They're going to have
Exactly.
a gluten-free menu. Like, I know that eating and having a meal is going to allow me to connect with people that don't play golf. So I think your goal of getting past that is going to happen fairly soon. Yeah.
Thanks for going down that rabbit hole with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk misconceptions. When you tell somebody what you do, what do you think they think when you tell them?
They think I'm bougie. They think I'm, yeah. The word consultant comes with this tagline that you are better than other people, because the way they see a consultant is something that you brought up earlier, that here comes this guy off the streets. He's not one of us. He doesn't know us. He doesn't know our business. He doesn't know our processes. And now he's coming in giving direction and telling us what to do. That's the first thing. The average person thinks a consultant is bougie. There are people who are bougie who love the idea that I'm a consultant, because they think that, oh, he's upper crust. He knows everything. He's in there advising. So the misconception is that people who are common, regular, everyday workers think a consultant's bougie, and people who are bougie love the idea that I'm a consultant.
Do you ever feel like you have to, what do they call it? Wash it down or water it down a little bit?
People always ask what that means. Like, what does that title mean? And so, you break it down. Some people simplify and say, oh, you're a trainer. Sure. If that's easy for them, because I'm not one that needs to, up myself. Like, it's like, oh no, I'm not just a trainer. I do all these other things. No, if it makes sense in your brain to say you're a trainer, cool. I'm good with that. But I don't need to let them know it's more than that. If that's as simple as it gets, I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't have an ego like that.
Gotcha. All right. Let's say you're commissioned to put up a billboard, and this billboard is in the most trafficked area of Phoenix or the Valley. What would you put on this billboard? What ask of your, I don't want to say community because you're more inward facing. What ask of municipal culture, municipal employees, municipal workplace would you put on this billboard in regards to organizational development?
Get the facts. That's the message. Because you just mentioned it. People have preconceived notions of things, and they have been fed something from somewhere else, right? And a lot of times it's hard to learn, because people don't really want to learn. They want to be told. And I have to preface that, like, well, what's the difference? Learning is me following through the steps of getting to the part of knowledge, right? So, you explain to me what a podcast is, and I don't know what a podcast is. So you have to walk me through it, what that entails, and what makes it different than a TV show, what makes it different than a radio show. Like, what does that entail? Who can see it? Where is it being broadcast to? Like, things that terrestrial radio, as a person who worked in radio, terrestrial radio only goes a couple of miles outside of the city, right? You don't have a radio show that broadcasts in Phoenix and it can be heard in Seattle. That's not how it works. It can only be seen in the confines of that area. Television, very different. Be like, oh yeah, you could broadcast TV. Well, no, it's only broadcast on a station in a network in a particular market. Another market has to own that and grab it and say, hey, we want to have that too. So it's not like TV is broadcast across the world. It's restricted within a certain area, the confines of the US. So understanding things first is getting the answers to the questions you have. So when I talk about only the facts, I need to be able to say, what questions do I have about this thing? And I need to be able to do the research and spend the time to learn it. Most people just don't have that time. And so when I say the facts, is like, I want to answer all the questions you have, but you have to ask the questions. So don't tell me what you know. Tell me what you want to know, and we can start from there and figure out where you're being misinformed. And part of that is where the source of information is coming from. For a person that learns and teaches, I very rarely design curriculum of my own from my own thoughts. I'm always putting together curriculum from a number of different sources, and there's a collective. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll use data from Gallup. Gallup does a lot of polls. They don't go in and say, hey, we're only going to get people in Phoenix. They're going to smaller regions, and they're not only getting from Republicans and Democrats and independents, or blacks and whites and women and men. Like, they're pulling from everything. So I start with things like that. What did Gallup say? Trusted sources. What does the Harvard Business Review say? Where are these things coming from? From NPR, some area that's nonpartisan, right? So collecting information from those and saying these are where the facts. And if that fact is backed up by the United States Department of X, okay. So the question becomes: do you trust the U.S. Department of X? If so, cool. If not, then where do you think I should be getting this source from? Well, I got my information from this source. Okay, cool. Let's go and look at that source. So this writer is got this credentials and they have background in this. Where's that? What makes that person a trusted source? Where's the backup from? And who are they interviewing? Oh, they interviewed 10 people. 10 people is your source? Or 10,000 people? Where do you think so part of the facts is making sure people have taken the time to say, I want to learn something, but I need to be okay with getting the source of information from a place that I don't know. And I should have no reason to not trust them in advance.
Let's say there's public works directors, city managers, mayors, council people listening to this episode now. What would be your advice to them in their search for a consultant for organizational development to not have that? So before I graduated college, I figured out that Fox and CNN reported on the same story from two different angles. And I'm not getting into politics, but I'm just saying, like, the same story, this one thing happened, but there's two different, perspectives and opinions on it. And I'm like, wow, this is news. Like, I thought all news was the same, and it was just like different colors on the screen, different people behind the desk. But then I learned, I'm like, oh wow, this is like society. And you go deeper down the rabbit hole. So what would a city or a organization do to find a consultant? Like you said, the information, where are they getting their information from? And hopefully it doesn't come with bias. How can they figure that out and get that right?
This is going to sound very generic, but I would advise everyone, if you do not know how to process map, or you've never used a Visio, that's how my brain works. My brain works in the as if, then, when this kind of scenario. So for example, let's start off with the beginning, right? So somebody here is like, don't eat beef that was raised in Texas because it's got these diseases. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so there's beef. Okay, where's the beef raised? Right, this beef comes from Texas. Okay, what farm does it come from? Right, whatever that. Oh, well, there are 45 farms in Texas that raise beef. Okay, that's the facts, right? The beef can only come from one of those 45 farms. How many diseases and things or records from the FDA have been reported to any of these 45 farms? One. Perfect. We're going to eliminate the other 44 because there's no history or record of anything coming from those. FDA has done their research, so there's nothing on books that says there's a disease-infected farm in Texas. So you got the one farm that does it, and you look how much percentage of beef from the entire list of beef in Texas comes from that farm. 0.00001%. Okay.
Yeah.
What does that number look like? That number consists of what restaurants, get beef from there.
Yep.
Bob's,
Safeway buys it.
Bob's Hamburger Shack. Wait, no stores, no grocery stores, no restaurants, just one restaurant in a small town in Texas gets the beef from that farm. That farm does not sell. That restaurant does not sell their beef aftermarket to any restaurant or anything. They're the only owners of that beef, and that's where it is. So you think about something like that and say, all Texas beef is infected with this disease because one farm in one restaurant in one city has it infected. That's not the facts. The facts is of all of the beef that comes from that area, 0.00001 of the beef is infected. That's the facts. So when you follow the order of things you need to know and the questions you need to ask, start at the beginning with where your concern is, and then follow that tab through everything. But that's where I'm saying the work is too much for people. They don't have time to go through all the details.
Then you got to find out if
they cut out the 45, the other 44, markets and ranches, and say, well, one ranch has it, so that must mean all ranches have it.
No, Yeah,
Yeah,
and
go
then
ahead.
if you look deeper, you figure out that the poultry industry wrote that article and they funded the research behind it. You're like, here we go. Yeah,
This is where I think the opportunity comes in for people to learn and be more educated in what they want. Because at the end of the day, I want my life to be filled with truth, and I want to learn more. And I think when I do, this goes back to the very, very beginning. I can now communicate with people in a way that says, oh, all the beef from Texas is infected. Well, it's interesting you say that because I actually spent some time doing the research, and it looks like it comes from one farm in one county in one city, and they only sell their beef to one restaurant. So it's only that restaurant. There was reports of 10 outbreaks at that one restaurant. Well, 10 outbreaks in a town of 100 people is what? 10%.
yeah,
So if I now
that's a
write an
big number.
article,
Yeah,
so if I write an article now says there's records that 10% of all residents, think about that. I leave out the county, I leave out the city. 10% of all residents have been
yeah,
affected by an infected beef outbreak. You publish that, you send it out, somebody in national picks it up, and then there you go. There's your headline. 10% of all beef from Texas is infected, and these are the outbreaks, and these are the people that are infected. You don't go to question 10%
yeah,
of what population? 10%
yeah,
of the entire nation, of the state,
yeah,
of the
yeah,
county, of the city. That's how people take their information in. They don't question the percentages, the numbers, and the source. They
yeah.
just
Per
hear the
capita. Yeah,
headline, and that's good enough for them. And I'm not that
yeah,
person. You couldn't tell
yeah.
me 10% of all the population because I'm going to ask you what population.
Good for you, man. I like
Yeah.
the reverse engineering of it. I feel like more people, if they just take another, like you see a headline on TV, take 6 minutes out of your day,
Yes.
pop it up on Google. Sometimes Google's biased, I get it, but if you search well enough, you'll be able to find, like you said, you'll open it up and you'll go, oh, this is the actual news behind it and not the headline behind it.
And
So
you're not doing this with
yeah,
everything. You're doing this with
no,
only the things that you're questioning and concerning
yep,
about. I don't
yep,
question this about things that I'm comfortable with. If it's something I'm comfortable with, I don't need to go researching. I'm like, okay, I'm good.
yeah,
Tastes good, looks good,
yeah,
feel good, I'm good.
yep,
But if it's those
yep,
things, those headlines that say, man, that really concerns me.
yeah.
If you find yourself doing that a lot, then maybe you're just the person that's concerned about everything. That's a whole different conversation.
No,
That's a
like
whole different.
when we go to the pediatrics, and because kid, my son will have a RSV or COVID. You got the
Mhm.
green snot, he's coughing, all
Yeah,
that.
right.
You're like, hey, why does this kid keep getting sick?
Yeah.
And they say, well, it's a bug going around, and I always think, okay, is it a bug going around or every kid you see, because you are a pediatrician, right?
Mhm.
You see kids all day, and most of the time you see kids because they are sick and they're in your office.
Right.
Like that's why you think there's a bug going around. Or if there's not just a bug and it's like a small percentage of kids getting sick. So like I always have to kind of run it through that. Okay, A, what's the incentive behind you saying that? And B, how does this information cross your desk? You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
And,
yeah.
working in the hospital network, one thing that they don't do, they don't do collective research. So for
Mm,
example, if you see that I saw 10 kids today, and of these 10 kids, they all have the same symptoms and same problem, the physicians don't go and say, what zip code do they live in? What
yeah,
school do they go to?
yeah.
Do their parents share something in common? It's the same. Maybe they all live in the same apartment complex. Like that's
Uh,
not done. So once again, this
yeah,
goes back to what we are talking about. That your sample size of 10
yeah,
patients out of 15 that day may say all of them had the same ailment. Right.
yeah.
But they all may go to the same school. So the
Yep.
issue is not a citywide, pandemic or a citywide issue. It's contained to
Yeah.
that one school. One kid at the school got sick. He showed up to school and infected all his classmates. But
Yeah.
it's easier for a doctor to say, "Well, I had 10 patients out of 15, and they all 10 of them had the same thing." It's a bug going around, around,
Yeah.
around, or just
Scare everybody
contained
now.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
one of the things that I think humans, not Americans, but humans, is if you really, really, really want to know the truth, if you really, really want to know the truth, you take that work process, the workflow, and
Yeah.
say, where do I start? What do these 10 kids have in common? That's part of learning, and it's part of developing your mind and being a person that can consult. because the consultant process is, I need to simplify the concerns that you have. If you tell me that you're spending X amount of money on this, and I'm going to look at all these applications of all these applicants you have and say, well, these applicants all have this problem and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, I'll simplify it and say, what do they have in common? Boom, filter. Oh yeah, all your patients that are having this problem are all in the same zip code. And I could just stop there and say, this is not a pandemic. This is not a widespread issue. You have all these people coming from the same area. So there's probably something specific about that. And if we wanted to dig deeper, same school, same apartment complex, same neighborhood, whatever, then you can kind of find things. It's the killer. Like when people are like, AIDS came from eating monkeys, right? Or having sex with monkeys. Like, you're telling me AIDS came from a person having sex with a monkey? That's your answer to me? I need some more details on that. Like, how did that become your answer to the collective people saying AIDS came from having sex with monkeys? And then it was like, well, maybe he didn't have sex. It could have eaten it. Which is it? How does it ingest? Is it exchange of fluids? Is it blood? Is it like what? Tell me. I don't need to know the answer, but don't come out and tell me that somebody ate a monkey and had sex with the monkey, and that's where it came from. Like,
that's And I think with today in the culture we live in, and the I would say the news cycle, how quick it is, these headlines have to be big and bold, and they have to have that pattern interrupt of so strong and so bold that it stops you in your tracks. And I think most people are just getting off and going, you know what? I'm gonna just live my life. I'm gonna eat chicken tonight. I'm gonna eat beef tomorrow. It's all good.
Right.
It's gonna get sick 6 times a year. Okay. I'm gonna still do my thing. So I always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors you had along your journey. And then also I want you to give a word of inspiration and motivation to your fellow, let's say organizational development consultant type counterparts across the country.
Yeah, I'm going to disappoint you on the mentor thing. So even though I'm involved in 2 mentor programs currently, I'm managing one and I'm on the board of another. I've never had a formal mentor in my entire life. And so I think part of it for me was I always had survival skills, always had adaptability skills, that if I found myself in a situation where I felt like, man, I just lost my job because the company I was working for went out of business, I had to dig really deep and say, okay, Jerrold, what are you good at? What can you do? Because you're going to go out looking for jobs. You know how much money you need to make, right? That's the starting point. I know how much money I need to make to survive and take care of my kids. I know how far I'm willing to travel. And so I had to go through all of those things. Like, what can I do that's acceptable? What's not acceptable? And once I honed down on that list, those are the jobs I focused on applying. But professionally and getting development and building skill sets, no one really guided me on that. I think one of the things that I've learned in teaching this class on emotional intelligence is I've been really highly self-aware. I've always been able to be, understanding myself, where I could succeed, where I was good at, what I wasn't good at. I don't apply for jobs that look like they're great. Like, I know how much money I need. Like, oh, there's a job, Chief Information Officer of such and such, and it pays $300,000. I'm applying for that job. No. So I know where my limits are. So that's one thing. I think being self-aware has helped me to navigate all of this. So I haven't had anybody giving me that guidance, but as I'm start to managing mentor programs now, I'm able to kind of give that information to others. Like, hey, before you start looking at me as a mentor to help you out, I'm gonna give you lesson one. Lesson one, let's start with you. Let's start internally. You need to be honest with yourself. Are you really, I know you want this job. I know you want this job. It's the next job in your tier, right? You work in this job and your manager's about to retire. You're next in line. Are you good at these things that person has to do? If you're not, then that's probably not your job. And if it is, if you want it to be your job, you might need to take some time and adapt to those skills to learn that. So I've never had a mentor, but I think
I appreciate your answer in that and your transparency in that. I asked this question to everybody. 300 episodes, I always ask this question, and nobody said they haven't had a mentor. And it's interesting because I learned this a couple years ago. This podcaster said when most people are asking for advice, they're usually asking for an accomplice. Like they kind of already have their mind made up. They just need somebody to stamp it, or like, you know, just knight them and say, yeah, you can do that. Or yeah, you should do this, you do that. And I appreciate what you said. Like, dude, you sometimes gotta look at yourself. Sometimes you got to audit your own gift, skills, and talents and say, I'm not good at this. I'm good at this. Let me go this way. So I appreciate how you know, personal responsibility, and said, okay, I can go down this path on my own, you know, without having to, you know, have somebody to look up to, or dope me with some knowledge, or knight me and say, you can go ye therefore. So I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's one way I've looked at it before, and I'll tell you this, and I just came up with this just now as I was thinking about it. What it reminds me of is when I was younger, I was always one of the shorter kids, always just one of the smaller kids. But I got a tenacious attitude of winning and being the best. Always been inside of me. And in that, you know, if you were to have me on the playground and they would be picking kids for, you know, dodgeball or whatever, or baseball or football, you know, I'm the little kid. So I'm getting picked, you know, in the beginning. I'm getting picked at the end until you see me play. And like, that dude's a beast. That dude is on it.
Jerrold.
Like,
get Jerrold.
Man, I saw him last time, man. He threw out 5 dudes with 1 ball. I don't know how it happened, but he threw a, you know, magical ball. And so that's in the beginning. In my younger childhood, I was always, maybe mentally, I was always in that I'm smaller, I'm shorter. I don't want to be on the bench. I want to be the starter. And it happened to be in all of that from when I was a kid, especially in sports. And that's really helped me out, I think, as a whole. But in that, it helped me to learn that I was just as good as the guys that were bigger than me. I just had to figure out a way to show how good I was. So being smaller, I had to be faster. I had to be smarter. I had to think things a little bit different way. So I think for me, in that self-awareness process, it goes back to that old school thing, is that if you are the shortest kid, the smallest kid, and they're picking teams, then let that happen the first time. The first time you can get picked last. But when the game starts, if you are the best player in that game, never, ever again will you ever be the last person picked, because now they're not looking at you as a small person or, you know, younger. They're looking at you like, that dude's cold-blooded. He's bad. And that's always what I've carried through with everything else. So when I go to interviews for jobs and maybe my resume doesn't have a master's degree on it, or it doesn't have this or that on it, I go into interviews thinking that if you hire me, you're getting the best person possible. And that's part of something I can't transfer to somebody else, but it's the conversation I would have with somebody saying, look, if you don't have a mentor or either, you need to have that last kid pick mentality. And if you do, and you can work on your own skills, that'll work. And so you had another question. What do I say to other people that are,
to those consultants out there? They're in the trenches right now. They're fighting their battles. What do you say to keep them inspired, keep them motivated?
Man, stack it up. And when I mean stack it up, I mean everything. Stack your skills up, stack your network up, stack your wardrobe up, stack your phrases, your quotes, everything. Stack it up, man. You need to have an arsenal for every situation that's going to come up. One of the things that I use as a tool, and I've enjoyed it now, but I love trivia. I love trivia. I've really had a enjoyment, but I don't do it with the impression that I'm going to absolutely learn every topic of everything. I stay in my lane, right? Music, I got you. Sports, I got you. History, I got you. Geography, not so much. But part of what I do in stacking up little tidbits of knowledge of things is when it comes time to networking and communicating with people, right? And showing my skill sets. I can talk to anybody about any subject. Not a long time, you know? So you could throw out some stuff in there, like, I don't watch hockey, but you could throw out some stuff and somebody's like, hey, I love hockey. Like, okay, are you like Original 7, you know, hockey or whatever? Like, what? Like, what do you know about that? It's just something I picked up along the way. Like, apparently, I think it's 7 or 5. I have to check it out again. I have to remind myself. But there was an Original 7 hockey team, the original group of hockey teams before everything started. But just having that small little tidbit of knowledge is a conversation connector to somebody who can now talk going back to listening, they can now talk and tell me all the history of hockey that they know. All I had to do was make a connection with them. So now I get to sit back and listen and be like, okay, Bruins, got it. Flyers, got it. Boom. Get that. Then there's things that I already know. Football, I'm good. Basketball, I'm good. So I can do that. Baseball, I'm good. But if I know a little bit about what you know and I can connect with you on those things, that's it. So as a consultant, if you can connect with people on a number of different scales or scopes of things, you will find yourself as an asset because they want to be able to let you into their circle of trust. And part of that is connected with them, whatever it may be. Just know a little bit about something and then let the rest of that knowledge come from the persons who are the knowledgeable people about it. And they'll inform you. So I heard you have some problems with this. Oh, yeah. What's the problem? Oh, yeah. Or this and this. Okay. So is it the UI or the UX? Like, okay, UI, UX. These are just terms that are familiar with people in tech, right? Is it the interface of what it looks like? Or is it the operational side of how it operates? That's all you need to know. And they'll tell you everything else you need to know about that. But your gateway into that community is knowing a little bit about those communities and connecting with them. And that's your goal. Your goal is to know a little bit about it and not shy away and says, I don't know anything about tech. You don't need to know anything about tech. You need to know the password, right? What's the password? Password is UI, UX. Cool. That gets me in the door. And from there, they'll explain to me how those things operate.
Yeah. It's funny. When I was growing up, like, you meet older gentlemen and you could tell the guys who are super funny and like lively and everybody like being around them, they weren't like the specialists. They were more the generalists. They knew a little about a lot, not a lot about a little, and then allowed them to move more freely throughout a room and kind of grab conversations and be that guy like that. We as a young kid, you look up to that person. So it's interesting you're saying that. All right, so last question here. Let's say I'm coming to Phoenix, which I'm in the Valley also. But if I text you and I say, Jerrold, where can I go to get the best burger in town? Where are you going to send me?
Oh my God. So if this was like 5 years ago, I would have easily told you to go to Deluxe because Deluxe was like my spot. They closed down. COVID hit them pretty bad. So Deluxe would have been my go-to about 5 years ago. So now it's difficult because now I would say Zen Burger is my spot. I love Zen Burger. The one thing about Zen Burger for me is that my favorite burger at Zen Burger is not on the menu anymore, but they still make it. So they have a breakfast burger.
Just for you, huh?
No, not just for me, but they have a breakfast burger that they used to make, but they still have the ingredients to make it. And so this is my first time ever having a burger with an egg on it. I'm not really a huge fan. Yeah, I don't eat eggs over easy, so I usually get the Zen Burger with the egg over hard. But it's got avocado, it's got bacon, it's got grilled onions on it, it's got the melted cheese, grass-fed beef, all that good stuff on a toasted bun. So Zen Burger, the breakfast burger, is my one. That's my number one. But Zen Burger as a whole, as a restaurant, probably is the best burgers in town.
Okay. Zen Burger it is. Well, Jerrold, thank you for hopping on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your wealth of information knowledge with everybody. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Jerrold, any final words before we get out of here?
No, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and you're doing real good.
Thank
the
you.
Questions, man. So you sharpen up your skills on interviewing. So I appreciate that, having a good interview.
Hey, man, 300. Hopefully, I'm decent at it now, man.
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Once again, thank you for hopping on. This has been a Public Works podcast.